As you drive through Indian country throughout the United States, you will notice several things. The beauty of nature that surrounds them, the isolation they have from the nearest city, maybe a casino or a noticeable lack of businesses, industry, or places to work. Though there is one thing you will see on almost every reservation in the United States. That is the noticeable predominance of substandard housing. 40% of Native Americans who live on reservations live in overcrowded or physically inadequate housing conditions as compared to the 6% of the general population. The Coalition on Indian Housing and Development reported that in 2003 there was an immediate need for the development of over 200,000 housing units on Native reservations. American Indians are more likely than any other Americans to live in crowded, substandard homes. 12% are without plumbing, 14% without electricity, and 11% without kitchens. But what are the social impacts of these housing situations? What does the symbol of the home do for the children, the family, and the community as a whole? Does it just mean that they're poor? Or does it affect other social aspects as well? How is this housing affecting concepts of self-identity, family, and community development? What impacts can the assistance provided by tribal governments, housing authorities, and nonprofit groups impact the construction of the family and community? In this documentary, using a social theory called symbolic convergence theory, we will see the shared reality of what housing does to and for a community in Indian country today. The three focuses of this documentary are the child, the family, and the community as a whole. So what are reservations facing in housing today?
I think every reservation I've been to, there's just a total lack of housing, and just it's a big need that we need.
One day I was remodeling some apartments, and we had a Native American guy that was working for us. We went, there was no one else there, him and I just to stay, and we sat down for lunch, and he just didn't hesitate at all to pull out a Budweiser and have a beer for lunch right in front of me, and I had a cup of coffee and a sandwich, and he was so blatant about having this beer right in front of me that I just had to blatantly ask him why he thought he could do that and why he needed to do that. And he told me that the childhood and the way that he grew up, he felt that he probably needed to numb himself a little bit and just not worry about anything. And so he proceeded to tell me about kind of how he grew up and how his mom was, and he told me about when he was a kid at home, the only bed he had to sleep in was a pile of dirty laundry in the house, and there was probably 15 people living in the house, and that was his bed. And it really hit me pretty hard how people right here in our backyard in our own state of South Dakota can be stuck living in these kind of situations.
The funds from HUD has been that every Indian Housing Authority has been for the past 22, 23 years has gradually, it's fading out.
We lived in a teepee or tent in Hitchcock Park for about a year. They wouldn't give us a house. They gave a house to my dad because he was white. But if they found out we were Indians, then they denied us. So we lived in a tent on Hitchcock Park in Mitchell for a whole year when I was an 8th grader.
Right now there's my daughter, her 5 children, and me and another grandchild of mine. So that makes 8, and then her boyfriend makes 9. The basement is like all bedrooms that are partitioned off with sheets or curtains. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of those partitions for the other children and for my daughter and her boyfriend.
I live in the local subsidized housing over here. Right now I got like 2 other families living with me in my home right now. And I live in a big 4-bedroom home. There's me and my husband in one room, my sister, her husband, and my son in one room. Then my daughter and her family in one room, which she has 3 kids. And then the other one, there's 3 in that room. Yeah, there's one sleep downstairs.
It's been a while since they built new homes here on our reservation. I believe the last time they built any homes was in 1995. Those were home ownership homes, but they're not, well, they change as the years go, you know. We still, our central housing, you'll see them when you go around behind the casino over there. Those were our first HUD homes. Those were built back in 1969, 70, something like that, you know. But the homes are, they're more or less kind of built the same. I mean, you know, like you said, one size fits all. They have 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom homes.
So a home is stability, privacy, happiness. You can be gone all day, but you can come home and you can rest. You can cook what you want. You can go to bed. You can do anything you want in your own home. That's stability. That's privacy. That's respect. And of course you're going to take care of your home. That's your life. Your home is your life. You live in your home the way you can be happy. A lot of people used to live anywhere, just anywhere. They still live just anywhere with no housing. Down by the river in tents, down by the river in homemade shelters. And if you go down there at night, you can see them. But a lot of them are drunk because they have nothing else to do.
What does the housing do for the children? What is the role of the home for the children, especially in their development?
They didn't have to worry about where they were staying, or different things to be concerned about when you have your own home. I mean, they can go there and study and have a place to go after school. There'd be some positive long-term effects. I guess that would have to be measured.
For the children at their homes, that's their sanctuary. That's where they have to live.
I think the biggest impact that Habitat has is once kids grow up in their own home, where their parents are a homeowner and they have stability, I think the kids have a substantial advantage over the other kids as far as their learning in school, their development with social activities, and their pursuit of higher goals in their future. They're probably going to be a higher percentage of kids that go to college or strive to go to college. They're definitely going to be a higher percentage of kids that finish high school. I think just having the kids in a better situation, having their own bedroom and their own bed is just a huge impact for the community for the future as these kids get older.
If it affects them, if they're overcrowded, it's like I noticed I used to work in a school. I mean, like, kids come in tired all the time and sleeping in class and stuff. But when they get into the house by themselves with just their family, it seems like they're doing a lot better in school and stuff, and early teens and stuff. They're not running around as much, because they have a home that feels like home. So I noticed that from actually my cousins. They just moved into a house, and they're my auntie's kids. He was in trouble all the time and stuff, and not doing good in school. But when they moved in the house, it seems like his grades gotten better, and I don't see him running around at night or hearing about him getting in trouble with the law and stuff anymore. So that helps.
Yeah. The littlest one, she's 11 years old. She seems to be having some kind of problem because she's not doing well in school. She switched from one school, went to another one, had a problem there. Now she's going to switch back to the other school. So she's scared, I guess, of sleeping where her bed is in the corner of the basement. It must not feel like a room to her. So she'll end up on the floor by her mother's bed, or she'll end up on the couch upstairs, or sleep with one of her sisters if they'll let her. And
I think it feeds into that you have a system in place where a kid lives in a substandard condition who doesn't feel like, isn't given the right things to move up in their social hierarchy. So then education suffers. And
if we had an increase in the homes, you mean, for the kids like that? Yeah, that would be good for the future of them. Again, it's a warm environment, a safetiness, and hopefully they have a happy life for the kids, for their offspring.
The home is seen as a stabilizing factor in a child's life. It serves as a means to keep children occupied and out of troublesome situations. The children on these reservations with substandard housing conditions are feeling the impacts of these conditions outside the home. The interviews show that their schooling can be seen to improve if they sleep better, and their grades do go up as the housing situations improve. They also show signs of being able to live a healthier and more comfortable life. The children are just a component of what makes up a family, but the family as the whole is dramatically affected by the housing. What vision is created for the families living in Indian country? What is the role in which the housing serves for the family? Or is it more than just a shelter?
There's a lot of people that live like me, have families living together. I think whatever's going on down here, it's depressing, very depressing, because there's no jobs or anything for anyone.
They're drinking, going out, partying, sometimes trying to get away from the family too, because they have argument or something and they run off and do things that they're not supposed to do. And I would say maybe people are saying she has a lot of people living with her. How do they get along? How do they do it, you know?
Because you know, when you get families a lot of families that live together, and there's a lot of child abuse, child neglect, sexual abuse, sexual neglect in homes. I mean, you know, some people actually trust other family members, but sometimes it, you know, things happen. I could see things like that going on. It's just too crowded, you know. Then you get people that you get domestic charges. People get frustrated. You know, there are, and one house comes available down here through low rent housing. You know, they probably got about 30 applicants for the house. Right. While they're pregnancy, they're living in these houses that have mold in them, and when the kids are born, the disability that they have, you know, when they're born. There's a lot of homes on the reservation that do have the mold problem in the low rent houses.
It's stressful, no privacy. If you're sick, you have nowhere to sleep because everybody else has the rooms, and you just kind of have to be on your own.
I don't think people would, they always say, well, I don't want nobody coming into my home because look at that or look at that, and my furniture isn't that good, or my walls need painting or something like that.
With the multiple generations living in the home, it doesn't lend well with everybody getting along because everybody's different, especially at different age levels, and you get multiple generations in a home, that causes big issues. Well, I think what it does, a lot of it is, it keeps a lot of the little bit of money that the folks have. I think it tears a lot of it out of their pockets to keep their houses heated. The winter's pretty rough on folks around here. They know they got to batten down the hatches. Some may have broken windows or old windows or leaky doors. There's a lot of issues with weatherization with the older homes and homes that aren't in good condition. And the folks got to heat the home, and it's really, this is especially hard on kids in the winter too, because they need to get good rest and they need to go to school and they need to not worry about being warm. So when you have a house that leaks air really bad and even has drafts through it and they're trying to heat it in the winter, their utility bills go through the roof. You know, there's some folks where their furnace doesn't work, so they use their stove to heat their home. It's very dangerous. It doesn't work very good, and so those are situations that they run into with those.
You could never get married I mean, you could get married, but you had your, I guess, dual rental rate. And like, if I was with like me, we're married, and then if she works, I work, then 30% of that has to go for the rental rate. But if you didn't get married and you just stayed in there and you had kids, then you got paid. I was always against that.
Making them realize that, you know, or the young ones, they need to get out and get their own, maybe having their own homes will bring up their esteem and everything, especially the ones that just graduated from high school.
They wish they had things that those homes have, because a lot of homes off the res have so much more than these homes. These homes are smaller, they're built smaller.
You know, one of the goals is to provide safe, affordable, decent housing, you know, and that kind of is the impetus for a healthy environment, you know, for kids and family. You know, a place of their own that they could call home. That, you know, I think it was a stabilizing factor. I mean, they didn't have to worry about whether they were going to be there the next year, or they chose where they wanted to be. So, I mean, that helped in them taking ownership of it.
We come in and this lady has like 4 kids, and she's a single mom, and she kept coming to us and making sure that her application was completed correctly the way we wanted it. So she finally gets everything done, and then she gets on the waiting list, and then of course we have about 60 or 70 people on the waiting list. So, and, you know, I just saw hers as about probably a 6-month period. She got offered her first house, but just the look on her face, I mean, it said it all there. I mean, that's your whole goal of your job is to help people get into housing and, you know, making them happy. I mean, but her face was, I mean, just the expression on it, you know, it hit home there as far as, you know, you're serving a purpose. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're helping your people and stuff. So
one client that didn't have anything, furniture, anything, just like, you know, mattress on the floor, just barely getting by, and did a move-in with her. And her and her kids were just ecstatic. They were just, you know, over the new from before and after. And from then I've seen her get a job. I've seen her get new furniture. Just that you can tell by just the look on her face when I see her out in the community. Going from just, you know, like a sullen look, going about her business. Now she's smiling. It's like she's going to do, you know, she's out to do something better for her life. You know, like it's a whole change. You can tell by these people, you know, when they move into a new home, the change in the way they carry themselves. The children, I believe that you know, I'm kind of closer with this lady I'm talking about, and you even see changes in school. They sleep better, you know, so they're more rested up, and it's just like they're comfortable.
Well, the new Ted with the new house probably walks taller. He probably carries a little more commanding voice. He probably even holds the kids accountable as far as discipline goes. Ted now is somebody. You know, he owns a house in Fort Thompson in a community where nobody does, you know. And if they do, it's not in probably very good condition. So I think that's the biggest thing, is he's going to carry his head high. People know that's his house. You know, there's not a lot of people that are in Ted's situation that have their own home, and when you drive down that highway right there and you look at that brand new house, they know that's TJ's house. And TJ carries that all day. So
Here we see the strong support for Stone's earlier arguments of what a home is or does. The home establishes pride, inspires others in the community, assists with happiness, and gives people extra motivation to do better for themselves. But the way the lives of these Indian families are now is that people see how they are less privileged than the white communities around them. Some people ask why they don't just leave the reservation and move to more populated areas and cities. Dustin Miller, a nonprofit lawyer working on the Crow Creek Reservation in South Dakota, crystallized the answer to this very question.
It's hard. You know, as I mentioned to you and Joe told you, 5 homes were built, brand new homes. I don't know if a rental system even can support the need, unless you had somebody come in and pour huge amounts of money to just build new homes. So it's pie in the sky and chicken and egg kind of thing. Like, without the money, how do you get homes? And the way you build homes is you pay for them through mortgages and that's just not the system in place. I mean, I hear people talk a lot, though, when we have people come from the outside. The difference you find is, you know, in other communities, you send somebody out. But here, even where I'm from, you know, in a small community in rural Iowa, you know, the idea was you left. And here it's more, people are encouraged to stay because home and this place is a safe place for somebody. So instead of sending somebody out when they're 22 to go to Sioux Falls, go find a job, they also understand that this is a safe place for that person, that there is a safety net for them, a family and that kind of structure. So you end up getting multiple generations living in a home.
So why aren't the reservation's housing issues progressing?
Alcoholism, because there's people that would just know where to go, just, you know, they live with other family members and they don't feel, you know, that the self-esteem that others, you know, when you have your own home, and that they have a tendency to go out and, you know, they're bored, you know, they just don't feel the self-worth.
I suppose you'd have to give them more houses, because when people apply for housing like that, usually there's 300-400 people in it, and sometimes we only get 70 houses. Then it becomes you either got to draw it out of the hat or you got to make a decision. But we never did have that many houses. There's so many people want houses now too. They get mad at politics, I guess, because usually everything's political. You have to go through the tribal council to get the...
By taking all the money out of their pocket to pay their bills. Mm-hmm. You know, electricity bill's a big one around here. And then if they don't have any money left over after they're trying to pay their bills and buy their food and buy the things they need for their kids, what they can't do is they can't start a business or try to invest in something or try to get something rolling, you know.
We're all crowded, like some places maybe there's, you know, families living with families. And then that causes, you know, friction between families, and there's more. So overall, I think it'd be great if we can get more houses.
I think what happens sometimes too, a whole lot of people lose out when somebody's messing up like that, and then the government comes along and takes away whatever funding they would have had, and they don't have another chance at it. So, you know, I think at the local level sometimes we're, you know, hurting pretty badly.
After looking at the children and family, what image can be painted for Native communities as a whole? What difference can it make to have more and better houses? These are the responses of interviewees when asked what they saw their community being like if housing situations improved on reservations.
I don't know, to me there's a little pride in it because I helped build some other houses that I worked on that we had to work on them, and we had to get like 500 hours in. You know, they're seeing that what we're doing, we're getting a house and a sidewalk and stuff, and they could have the same thing, so they're willing to come over and help out and work too. Maybe they'll help build a community, you know.
They just want to do better for themselves, and it's, when I see that, like when we do a move-in with somebody and they are so, you know, they are just so happy to have a home, and they do make their own changes in their lives by, you know, making their life better, doing this, looking for a job, you know, little things that makes them, like it builds up their self-esteem, and they got something there for their families, and it makes them want to go on and better their lives.
I see that if we had more housing, that a lot of people would be more happier on there. And plus it'll help create jobs if they help with, you know, building the homes.
Their morale as far as, you know, how their house looks and stuff, it helps them, you know, be more cooperative with us. And I guess, you know, when we start to clean the community and stuff, that, you know, that kind of motivates them to come in and help.
Well, I see it quickly as every time I build a house, you pull a family out of a bad living situation and put them in a good one. Especially a home ownership situation where they have the pride of home ownership, you know. That affects the community because the community sees that, and they're leading by an example, you know. They're a homeowner, they're paying a mortgage, and interest-free and no-profit mortgage, but they're paying a mortgage and they're paying homeowners insurance. So they're showing a shining example across the community. And then the other thing it does is it alleviates some of the crowding in the other home that they've come out of, or any living situation they may come out of. It really alleviates that situation. Or it even opens up a spot for somebody without a roof over their head to get in there. Maybe another sister or a cousin or somebody that needs a place to live. So we have an impact that way.
We wouldn't be so dysfunctional, and we would be happy. Our children, our grandchildren can come visit us, stay as long as they needed to, and now we don't have that.
I think if, well, everybody wants their own house, you know, everybody wants to live in their own homes and stuff, and we preach to their tenants that we, you know, you have to help out. Everybody needs to help out in some way, whether we, you know, whether it be the rent payment, or coming in and giving us suggestions what you would like, what kind of programs you'd like for us to have for the community. So different programs that what we think would help our people and stuff. It kind of does. Everybody's out there thinks it's like it's not actually wrong, but it's they're not part of it, or something that they're not a part of. So what we're going to try to implement is people to come in. We're going to try to set up a committee for planning, just different types of other programs that we want the input from the community, you know, stuff that we can do. But then they'll have more input in it, so then they'll think it's theirs and have more pride and stuff like that in the program.
They pictured their communities with less alcoholism, more community involvement, safer communities, happier, higher morale, and reductions of sexual and domestic abuse amongst families. All of these things are not insignificant factors to a community's ability to prosper. But what if these things do not change? If these communities do not receive the help that they need in their housing, what do they see lying ahead for their children? Vandalism, people leaving the reservation, losing community, more kids suffering, more drugs and alcoholism, and the continuation and often heightening of conflict. Housing is not an issue just faced by the smallest and poorest reservations, but Indian country as a whole. Even reservations that are larger and more successful, such as the Cherokee Reservation in North Carolina, face issues with housing. And speaking with Michelle Hicks, the chief of the Eastern Band of Cherokees, he states that substandard housing is still an issue, even with the major success of the casino. That this is a first priority for the community because substandard housing falters education, employment, and personal motivation.
Mold the community or the housing to the community, knowing who's living here or where, and developing that way, and that might call for bumping people up and down a list. Like if I have 3 or 4 different families, you know, that are further down, but I have enough money to build 10 houses here, I might split the difference and take the top 5 that are, you know, would like to live or who are signed up to live there, and then take more of the, you know, same family, you know, try to reduce the conflict on the back end, if you will, the extended family type concept, building that way. And so, you know, you'd have more of a sense of community that way versus, you know, some families being alienated by each other. It's like, you know, culturally, you know, that it's more of a communal type culture, you know, and if you built that way, if you built, you know, families together, then you'd kind of maintain that somewhat.
I think if you can get people in who care about accessing what we can from the U.S. government and then bringing it to the local level and then doing right, you know, by that money for the purpose that it was set aside for.
It is clear that housing is an issue and something that needs to be addressed in Indian country. So what is the answer? There are many interpretations of the answer, what needs to be done, and how to do it.
It's what I see in a lot of areas in Indian country is the need for quality people to go get the money. I think you've met with Joe a couple times or talked to Joe. Joe would love to go get the ICDBG grant from HUD, from ONAP, but who's going to write it? And without somebody here to write it, it's worthless. Holding the community back, I think it's just a piece of an overall kind of systemic problem. It's a piece of bad water. It's a piece of bad education. I wouldn't say it's the penultimate thing. It's a piece of a lot of things.
It's too much bureaucracy.
Yeah.
I had a friend back in the 70s who worked for, I don't know if it was the Housing Authority or some other tribal program where they repaired houses. And he said he knew an old woman who needed some screens on her windows. And he tried to apply to get the money to buy the screens and whatnot, and it was just too much. So what he did was padded his mileage and turned it in and got paid for the mileage, and then went and bought some screens and took them out to her house. He said that was a whole lot easier and quicker than going through the bureaucratic.
There needs to be a better flow and structure in the bureaucracy of working with HUD and the federal government. The efficiency is faltering and reporting requirements need to be clearer. The chief of the Cherokee Nation talked about how there needs to be clarifications and reduction of complications on who has access to what funds. There is a gap for the forgotten minority. Where do we fit in the communication process? Where are natives on its priority list, and why aren't they higher?
And it's extremely hard living here. But this is home. Where do we go?
This is where the social theory comes to be the supporting grounds for the policymakers to write policy that helps address these issues. The other part of the This Is My Home series is a policy recommendation to HUD to have issues addressed in their administration of funds to Native communities. There are 5 recommendations being made to make these situations better. First is to have a complete audit of the administrative system from HUD to the housing authorities onto the community members. This is to reduce the effects of bureaucracy, make funding more accessible, and to have funds delivered in a more timely manner. The second recommendation is to open block grants up to ecological non-profit housing groups. This will provide as a check on corruption on housing authorities, and if funds are being reduced to housing authorities on reservations due to corruption, the funds will still be available to the community members through the non-profit organizations. The third recommendation is to incorporate more ecological initiatives in the construction of the houses to make the housing more adapt to that particular climate and reduce the impacts of shelter poverty. Shelter poverty is what Mr. Jim Huntley, the Habitat for Humanity Director, was addressing when he was discussing the costs of heating and maintaining the home, and how that was taking all the money out of the family's pockets. The impacts of this are that it falters the family and community's ability to develop. Lowering bills and making houses more accustomed to the environment can make all the difference in a family's finances. The fourth recommendation is to have more emphasis on mutual help home ownership homes, to instill the values and pride accompanied with home ownership. The fifth and final recommendation is to have pilot programs to acquire construction certificates for better employment and to encourage community development. This also feeds into the cultural value Native communities placed on sweat equity.
We're a very small community, and we're the poorest community in the United States. And I don't know if that's going to ever change soon, because no one's helping us.
It's not just our reservation. From my experience, that's all over. It's kind of a hard life to me, but I don't know, it's kind of a way of life. I had to accept it.